Hi, I'm Pat Kiernan. This is Pat's Papers. Thanks for joining us this morning. We go through the newspaper headlines from across the country and thin them out to point you in the direction of what we find is most interesting and most relevant. Here's some of what we found today. The Chicago Tribune leading things off by adding up the numbers for President-elect Barack Obama. $1 billion for his campaign and other election-related efforts. The Trib notes that the hometown senator's campaign sets a new and dramatically higher bar for future candidates. The billion-dollar total includes already recorded and estimated fundraising for his campaign. My award for clever front-page headline goes to the New York Post for Rust in Peace. That's the Post's way of summing up the reaction of the Bush administration to calls to get involved in a bailout of the automakers. The Post digs up an old photo of the Three Stooges looking at a wrecked car. It says the CEOs of the Big Three looked more like the Three Stooges yesterday. The Detroit News on this story, noting that for the Big Three, the political timing is awful. They seek billions of dollars in government aid, just as Republicans have decided to return to their conservative economic roots, and Democrats have become worried about global warming as much as about blue-collar industries. To the New York Times, a report of the investigation into the Mumbai terrorist attacks. The Times says 2 men from Pakistan have now been identified as organizers. Here's a line from the story. It says, "It now appears both men were in contact with their charges as they sailed to Mumbai and then continued guiding the attacks even as they unfolded." An obituary in the New York Times today for H.M. This has been a well-documented case in brain science for 55 years, a man who was mostly referred to by those initials to protect his privacy. He lost all of his short-term memory in 1953. He has lived without remembering what just happened a minute or two ago. He died on Tuesday at the age of 83. President George Bush and First Lady Laura Bush will be returning to old friends in North Dallas. When they leave the White House, they will move to the neighborhood they left in 1995. They left when he became Texas governor. They have purchased an 8,500 square foot house. The mortgage, according to records in the Dallas Morning News, is for $3.1 million. One neighbor says, "We welcome lawyers, restaurant owners, or leaders of the free world." To Mobile, Alabama. In fact, pretty much every paper in Alabama again has news on this today. The fallout after the resignation of Auburn football coach Tommy Tuberville. The athletic director at the school says he was shocked. He tried to talk Tuberville out of it 3 times, he says. That despite chatter from fans who think the coach must have been forced out. On the topic of college football, the weekend section of the Wall Street Journal has a great read about the dominance of the South in college football. The story says a population boom and a growing economy have turned a regional obsession into a national juggernaut. Southeastern Conference teams have the highest attendance, some of the highest paid coaches, and a $3 billion TV package. They head into a conference title game tomorrow. One bit of pro football news. The Buffalo Bills moved to Toronto for a game this weekend against Miami on Sunday. USA Today says Buffalo fans are nervous the NFL is going to find the big Canadian media market up the road is more lucrative than their small market. Tragedy in western Massachusetts. The Boston Globe has a story that's all over the news today about the indictment of a longtime police chief in the town of Pelham. This after an 8-year-old boy accidentally shot himself with a machine gun at a weapons exposition. The police chief runs a business that co-sponsored that gun event. Front page of the Boston Globe has a remarkable story, just next to the gun story, about a gender gap in job losses this year. Compared to a year ago, more than 1 million more American men are without jobs, yet the number of women working has actually risen. The industries that have turned down are mostly industries that skew to men. Concerned about jobs in Washington State at Boeing, where the Seattle Times has a front-page report about delays in the Boeing 787. The delay in production of the new Dreamliner jet is only partially due to the shutdown at Boeing because of that 2-month-long strike by machinists. Washington Post on the front page reporting on sales figures from the big national retailers, the worst November in more than 30 years. American consumers make up over 2/3 of the economy. They have also been turning away from their credit cards. That gives up a potent tool for spending. I think this might be the craziest photo of the day. New York Post, if you win the lottery, you are often required to attend some sort of photo op to get your money. You hold up the big check and they take pictures of you. But nobody tells you what you can and can't wear to that photo op. So Diana Jennings of Staten Island in New York covered about 90% of her face in glasses, a hat, and scarf, because she doesn't want anybody to recognize her as the $6 million winner. Finally, from the LA Times, happiness seems to be like a contagious disease, according to a new study. Tracking relationships of nearly 5,000 people for decades, this study shows that good cheer spreads through social networks of nearby family, friends, and neighbors. And they've even been able to put numbers on this. Knowing someone who is happy makes you 15.3% more likely to be happy yourself. Well, there is a notable exception. Happy coworkers don't seem to boost your happiness the same way people in other aspects of your life can. The researchers suspect that's because of other aspects of the work environment that drag you down. And that's a look at just some of what's in the newspapers this morning. We try to pick the highlights for you each day, but if you think there's a particular story we should have included, send us a comment. You can do that at patspapers.com, and there you will find links to the individual newspaper websites where you can read these stories in their entirety.